In the shadow of history, two empires stand like giants across the ages. One was carved from stone and steel, its legions marching under crimson banners towards the edge of the known world. The other rose from colonies scattered along a distant shore, forging a republic that would one day dominate land, sea, and sky. Rome and the United States, separated by millennia, yet bound by a strange and unsettling resemblance. Both began with ideals that promised liberty, justice, and unity. Both grew with unstoppable momentum, their influence shaping the world far beyond their borders. In their prime, they commanded not only armies and economies, but the very culture and values of the age. Yet, beneath the marble columns and star-spangled banners, shadows have always lingered. Rome once believed itself eternal. Its citizens could not imagine a world without its rule until the day it fell. And so we ask, is history repeating itself? Are we living in the echo of an empire whose story we already know the ending to? Because sometimes the most dangerous truth is not that history rhymes, but that it repeats word for word. Every empire begins as something far more humble. Rome was not born in the grandeur of the Colosseum, nor the towering aqueducts. It began as a fragile republic, a patchwork of tribes bound together by a shared belief in self-rule and a distrust of monarchy. Its founding was steeped in legend, Romulus, Remus, and a city rising from the marshes along the Tiber. But the truth beneath the myth was even more compelling, a society struggling to balance freedom with order. The United States, centuries later, would follow a strangely familiar script. Born from rebellion against a distant king, its founders crafted a constitution that echoed Rome's earliest political framework. A senate to temper power, elected officials to serve the people, and checks and balances to prevent tyranny. Like the Roman Republic, America saw itself as exceptional, a shining model for others to follow. In both cases, the ideals worked for a time. The early years were marked by fierce debates, civic participation, and a sense of shared destiny. Citizens believed they were part of something revolutionary, something too strong to be undone. But beneath that optimism, the seeds of transformation were already sown. In Rome, military victories brought new wealth and new corruption. In America, expansion, territorial, economic, and cultural, began to strain the limits of the very system meant to protect it. The parallels are uncanny. Two republics, oceans, and centuries apart, each carrying within them the blueprint for greatness and the blueprint for their own undoing. The lesson history whispers is this: the moment a republic begins to see itself as an empire, it takes the first step down a road from which it may never return. Rome's armies were its pride, disciplined, relentless, and feared across the known world. Victory after victory brought in new provinces, slaves, and unimaginable wealth. Yet each conquest carried a hidden cost. More borders to defend, more enemies to pacify, more soldiers to pay and supply. The legions were not just Rome's sword, they became its greatest expense and, in time, its greatest weakness. The United States mirrors this trajectory with uncanny precision. Its military presence stretches across the globe. Bases in dozens of countries, fleets patrolling every ocean, and troops stationed in regions most Americans will never visit. Like Rome, these forces project power and deter rivals. But they also drain resources and entangle the nation in conflicts far from home. In both republics, expansion was justified as defense. Rome claimed it was securing its borders. America speaks of protecting freedom and stability. Yet the pattern is the same. The line between defense and domination blurs until it disappears entirely. And then there is the political cost. In Rome, generals who commanded victorious armies gained immense personal influence, often eclipsing the Senate's authority. Julius Caesar was not just a military leader, he was a symbol of how the sword could seize the pen of governance. In the US, the military-industrial complex and the prestige of wartime leadership can tilt political power toward those who promise strength, sometimes at the expense of diplomacy or restraint. Both powers also faced the problem of public detachment. For ordinary Romans, distant wars were abstractions, something to cheer for in triumphal parades, but disconnected from daily life. Modern America, too, fights wars largely invisible to its citizens. The burden falls on a small fraction of the population, while the majority watch from afar, disconnected from the human and financial costs. History shows that military overreach is not a sudden collapse. It's a slow bleed. Rome's borders grew so vast they could not be defended without exhausting the treasury. America's commitments, while technologically advanced, face the same peril. The more ground you hold, the more vulnerable you become. Empires rarely fall because of one decisive battle. More often they fade, stretched too thin, their reach finally exceeding their grasp. The Roman Republic was built on an ideal that no single man should hold absolute power. Checks and balances, a senate of equals, and the voice of the people were meant to protect liberty. But over time, those safeguards eroded. Senators grew rich from bribes and provincial exploitation. Elections became spectacles fueled by money and promises of favors. Laws were bent or ignored to benefit the powerful. Sound familiar? In the United States, the Constitution was designed with similar guardrails. Yet the influence of money in politics, the rise of partisan loyalty over national interest, and the revolving door between government and corporate power echo Rome's decline. Lobbyists wield outsized influence, just as Rome's wealthy patrons once pulled the strings of the Republic. In both cases, public service drifts into self-service. For Rome, corruption wasn't just a moral failure. It was a structural collapse. Governors of distant provinces siphoned tax revenue into personal fortunes. Generals promised land and spoils to their troops, undermining loyalty to the state. The Senate, once the guardian of Republican virtue, became a club for the elite, more concerned with preserving privilege than solving crises. Modern America faces its own fractures. Campaign finance systems allow vast sums to shape elections, giving the wealthy and connected a megaphone while ordinary citizens struggle to be heard. Gerrymandering, legislative gridlock, and the prioritization of partisan victories over pragmatic governance weaken the very idea of representative democracy. Both systems suffered from a creeping cynicism among the people. Romans grew to expect corruption. It became the cost of doing business. When citizens stop believing their leaders serve them, loyalty shifts to charismatic individuals, to parties, or to the highest bidder. That loss of faith in institutions is the true tipping point. In Rome, the erosion of republican values paved the way for emperors. The facade of the republic remained, but the Senate became a ceremonial relic. Power concentrated in one man's hands. In America, the concentration of political and economic power may not take the form of a single ruler, but the effect can be just as dangerous. A democracy in name, but not in practice. The lesson from Rome is clear. Corruption doesn't just rot the system from within, it rewires it entirely. At the height of its power, Rome's legions stretched across continents. From the forests of Germania to the deserts of the Middle East, the empire's reach seemed limitless. But each conquest demanded soldiers, resources, and constant vigilance. The frontiers were never truly secure. They were a drain, a constant pull on the treasury and manpower. Over time, the cost of maintaining far-flung territories began to outweigh the spoils they brought in. The United States finds itself in a strikingly similar position. With military bases in over 70 countries and ongoing commitments in numerous regions, the U.S. projects power on a global scale. But each of these commitments demands billions in funding, complex supply chains, and the constant deployment of service members far from home. Like Rome, America faces the strain of sustaining an expansive military presence, even in areas where strategic necessity is questionable. For Rome, endless campaigns kept soldiers away from their farms and families for years. Loyalty often shifted from the Republic itself to charismatic generals who promised land, wealth, or protection. In America, extended tours of duty and repeated deployments can strain service members' morale, relationships, and trust in the political leadership directing these wars. Rome also discovered that enemies learn and adapt. Border tribes became skilled at countering Roman tactics, and rebellions flared in conquered territories. Likewise, America has faced prolonged conflicts where the opposing side, often smaller, less equipped forces, adapts to technology and strategy, making quick wars drag on for decades. Financially, Rome's overreach drained the treasury. Heavy taxation followed, which in turn fueled unrest at home. In modern America, trillions spent on overseas wars could have been invested in infrastructure, education, and domestic stability. The opportunity cost is immense, but the political appetite for scaling back remains limited, partly due to powerful defense industry interests. Perhaps most dangerous is the political effect. In Rome, military success became a tool for political power, with generals using their legions to secure influence back in the capital. This blurred the lines between civil governance and military authority. In the U.S., while civilian control of the military remains a cornerstone, there is an increasing intertwining of political decisions and defense priorities, often in ways that blur accountability. Rome's fate offers a sober warning. Global dominance is not always a sign of strength. Sometimes it's the slow bleed that leads to collapse. The question for America is not whether it can sustain its reach, but whether it should. In the early days of the Roman Republic, politics was not merely a career, it was a duty. Leaders were expected to serve with integrity, to place the interests of the state above personal ambition. Over centuries, however, that ideal eroded. Wealth and power concentrated in the hands of a few elite families, and political offices became less about public service and more about personal enrichment. Bribery, patronage, and backroom deals replaced debate and civic responsibility. By the time of the late Republic, many senators were little more than the mouthpieces of wealthy benefactors. Laws were passed not because they served the people, but because they served the ambitions of those who paid for influence. The average Roman citizen, once a proud participant in governance, began to feel alienated from a political process that seemed rigged against them. The parallels with modern America are hard to ignore. The Founding Fathers envisioned a republic where elected officials were beholden to the people, not special interests. Yet today, vast sums of money flow through political campaigns, and lobbying has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Just as in Rome, legislation often favors those with the deepest pockets, corporations, wealthy donors, and entrenched political insiders, while the needs of ordinary citizens get lost in the noise. In Rome, corruption didn't just affect governance, it corroded the very fabric of society. Citizens who no longer trusted their leaders became cynical and disengaged. The concept of civic virtue, the idea that personal sacrifice was necessary for the good of the community, disappeared. Instead, politics became a battleground for self-interest. The same danger exists in the U.S., where political polarization and distrust in institutions have reached record highs. Voter turnout suffers, faith in elections wavers, and public discourse becomes poisoned by suspicion and misinformation. Another key factor in Rome's decline was the use of political power to protect the elite from accountability. Laws were bent or ignored for the well-connected, while the average citizen faced the full weight of the legal system. In the modern U.S., scandals involving politicians and powerful figures often result in minimal consequences, fueling the perception that there's one set of rules for the elite and another for everyone else. Rome's story also warns of how corruption breeds instability. As the political system became paralyzed by infighting and personal rivalries, decisions critical to the survival of the empire were delayed or mishandled. In America, partisan gridlock has repeatedly stalled legislation on issues from infrastructure to healthcare, even as problems mount. In the end, the erosion of civic virtue in Rome meant that when real crises arrived, economic collapse, foreign invasions, internal rebellion, there was no unified will to act. The Republic was too divided, too compromised to save itself. For America, the lesson is stark. A republic is not destroyed overnight. It unravels slowly, thread by thread, as corruption, inequality, and cynicism take root. Rome's fate shows that once the public ceases to believe in the system cannot survive for long.